Welcome to day 14 of my Valentine series, and today we'll be painting a red rose in full bloom. I'm using a kneaded eraser to get rid of the harsh pencil lines from the outline, and I'll be using a diluted pyrrole scarlet for my first layer of the rose. For the next layer, I'm still using that pyrrole scarlet, but I'll just use less water, and with each layer, I'll be using less and less water. So with this layer, I'll be trying to define the petals a little bit more, and I'm using this darker shade to outline and then blend it out with a damp brush, but also I'm building the shadows here. After going over all of the shaded areas that I want to be darkened, now I'm just going to do a little bit of a light outline over the petal folds and just the outline of the petals themselves. That way it's a little bit more defined, but I'm still going to blend it and make sure it's not such a harsh line. And with red being a complementary color of the green for the leaves, I'll be using the same pyrrole scarlet color to start adding the shaded and darkened areas of the leaves and stem. I'm moving pretty quickly here, so after I do the outline and the darker areas that I want shaded in, I'll use a damp brush to soften those lines and help blend once I add the new layers. And then I'll completely dry it before moving on to the next layer. Again, I'm still using that pyrrole scarlet, I'm just using a little bit less water. And now, because I darkened areas and left others alone, once I add the pyrrole scarlet layer on top, you can already start to see the shadows popping through. And once I'm waiting for that pyrrole scarlet to dry a little bit, I'll start working on the leaves and stem, and I'm using undersea green and heavily diluting it for my first layer. I think this might be the ugly phase since it's looking really flat and you can still see the red peeking through with the translucent green, but you just have to keep pushing through it. So because this green is the complementary color for the red, I can use the same green on the shadowed areas for the rose and just deepen the darkened parts that I can see peeking through. And then the leaves have had time to dry a little, so I can go back with the same color and just go over the outline and the leaf stem. And that way you'll get this glazing effect where it just keeps getting darker and darker with each layer. I'm only really shading one portion of the leaf. So on the left leaf, I'm darkening the right side, and on the right leaf, I'm darkening the left side. I completely dry it before moving on to my next layer. I don't want the colors to start getting muddy. So this time I added Windsor Red Deep with a touch of Moon Glow, and it gives this burgundy wine red color, which is perfect for darkening the shadows. I'm going over the darkest part of the shadow with this darker color, and then I'm blending it out with a damp brush. I'm using the same shade to lightly outline the flower as well as the interior petals. I'm doing this really lightly. I'm just trying to define each petal and give them their own space. And once I'm happy with that, I can move back to the green areas. I'm still using that undersea green, but a little bit less diluted. And now this is my third layer, so it's going to be a lot darker. I'm going to really focus on that right side for that leaf, and then the right side of the stem, and then the undersides for the little leaves underneath the bud, and then the left side for the right leaf. I'm still going to use a damp brush to blend it out, but I like that it's already starting to come together. And just like I used the darker shade to do a quick outline for the red, I'm doing the same for the green and just going over the shaded areas and just lightly outlining where I can. It helps to define each area. And now I'm going to add a touch more moon glow. We're going for the darkest shade for the shadow. And this time I'm not completely going over the darkest areas. I'm just doing a light touch. And then I'll go over it with a damp brush and blend it out. Once it's time for the cast shadow, I always keep a mix of Moonglow and Payne's Gray on my palette. I heavily dilute it and I like my cast shadows a little bit more defined. So I'm putting in the cast shadow and then using a damp brush to sop up any excess water that I might have on it. I like to darken the areas closest to the object, so I'm still using that same color and I'm just putting a little bit extra layers towards the areas closest to the rose. I completely dry it before moving on to the highlight. I'm using a bleed proof white and putting tiny little accents all along the tops of the petals, and then I'll use a damp brush to blend it out. Because the white is so potent, even using that damp brush will really elongate the little accent marks that you put, and it really helps to create depth in the petals. And then once you're happy with your highlight, you're done. And this is how it looks in natural light. I hope you enjoyed painting with me, and I hope to see you in the next video.